Welcome back to Lovely Times. Today we'll be discussing Spider-Man No Way Home. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lovely Reviews. This time I'm coming at you with Spider-Man No Way Home. Super excited that this movie got to come out. Fun fact, I just spent the last 50 minutes recording this and then I lost it all. I'm kind of sad about that, but I will try to keep the energy up and try to remember to talk about things that I felt really passionately about. Kind of wanted to give you a background for this movie. For me, I love Spider-Man. Spider-Man is one of my favorite characters. He's definitely one of my top 3 favorites. Whether he's 1, 2, or 3 changes on any given day. I love the Spider-Man films, especially the Andrew Garfield ones and the Tom Holland ones. The Raimi ones have a soft spot in my heart, but they aren't my favorites, to be honest. And then also Spider-Verse is amazing and probably one of the best superhero movies ever made. Coming into this movie, my expectations were kind of high. It was everything I wanted it to be, and it did it, but it did everything I wanted it to do in ways that I didn't necessarily expect, which isn't something I can say for Endgame. Endgame was more than I wanted it to be, and it did things in insane ways that I had no idea what the hell was going to go on. Like, I didn't know what the next scene was going to be. This movie, if you would have told me 2 weeks ago to tell you what's the plot of No Way Home going to be, I think I would have gotten this about 80% right. But that 20% that I wouldn't have gotten right makes me love this movie more than I think I expected to. I have seen it twice now. One time opening night with a packed crowd. One time the night after opening night with a packed crowd. Not as good as the first night, but it was okay. And was just really excited to see, the end of this Tom Holland trilogy, and see what would happen. To go through it, I guess we can kind of just go through the plot, and then I'll talk about things that I really liked about it. So the movie opens, right? Picks up right where the last one left off. Quentin Beck out Spider-Man as Peter Parker with the help of J. Jonah Jameson. And just a little side thing real quick, Mysterio is one of the best villains in the MCU by far. He is up there, in my opinion, with Thanos and, I was about to say Bacon Guy Shot, it's kind of funny, Zemo, not because of them looking cool, even though Mysterio looks up, or them doing cool stuff, but it's because they win. Same with Killmonger. They win in their goal to destroy the hero. And I think that is really awesome and something that Mysterio doesn't get enough credit for. Also, #Mysterio lives. He's not dead. There was way too much visual language in this movie showing him on newspapers and people talking about how they're like Mysterio supporters and graffiti and signs and stuff. He's definitely around, and he's going to come back as the leader of the Sinister Six. And it's going to be dope, and everyone's going to love it. And shout out to Jake Gyllenhaal, Taylor Swift. Nah, girl. I'm kidding. I'm not. Swifties, don't come after me. But yeah, Spider-Man's name is Peter Parker. What the? And of course we get it bleeped out. Would have loved to have heard that, but it's okay. So we get this awesome, well, let me rephrase that. We get this cool opening scene, a lot more comedic than I thought it was going to be, of Peter and MJ kind of swinging through the city. Newscopters are after them and everything. I really did enjoy when they get to the top of the bridge and he and Ned are FaceTime. It's like, dude. MJ's just like, dude. And she's like, my bad. Them swinging through the city. Anytime to see Spider-Man swing through the city is great. They then go back to the apartment. Poor Happy. Sorry, bro. And that's a really fun one shot, and kind of the last time I think this movie is. I think that scene is kind of the transition from the old films to this one, and the old films being the John Watts films. I think those first two feel very similar tonally, in the sense that they're kind of just high school kids movies, and that's kind of the end of that for this. The rest of this movie, there's little glimpses of it, but the rest of this movie is very much a different tone than the first two John Watts Holland movies. And there it is. Everyone knows. The world knows Spider-Man is Peter Parker. Their lives completely get turned upside down. Shout out to Will Smith. They get arrested. Damage Control is all up on them. Shout out to Damage Control coming back. Just love to see small things like that. We get awesome moments of the interrogations. We get the confirmation that MJ is MJ Watson, Michelle Jones Watson, meaning to all of the people that wanted there to be this white redheaded girl, nope, you ain't getting it. This is her. This is the Mary Jane in this universe. This is MJ. He will not have another MJ. He might have another Gwen. I kind of hope he doesn't. I hope it's Felicia Hardy. We'll get that's a story for another day though. But yeah, this is a cool character moment where you just kind of get to catch up and you get refreshed with who these characters are. Spider-Man being like kind of nonchalant. Come on, I want to help my friends. He is very important about helping his friends in this movie. We get MJ, screw the man. I'm gonna do my own thing. She knows exactly what this guy's gonna say and is not gonna let him get the drop on her. We have Ned being a bumbling idiot, which is, I think it's kind of weird that they make him seem so dumb, even though he's in this technically smart school. It's okay. It was funny, but kind of weird. And then we have Aunt May, who this movie does an awesome job of making Aunt May an actual character and not just an avenue for jokes, like she was in the first two movies. Like she actually has an arc and she actually has a purpose, to be motivation for Peter in this film and to be a role model for Peter in this film, which I think is awesome. And I really do appreciate the way they treated her with respect. So much respect in this movie, more than she's gotten in really any of them except maybe the first Garfield movie. So yeah, that was really, really cool to see. And you better lawyer up. Guys, they cut to the scene, they cut immediately and you just see the staff slam down, and if I'm lying, I'm dying. I was the very first one in my theater. I clapped my hands once and sat at the edge of my seat, and I probably dropped the first "oh shit," which is my catchphrase. My friend, my friend knows, makes fun of me for it. One of the first of many "oh shits" throughout this movie, and there he is. Charlie Cox is Daredevil, baby, and I was so happy because of the pop that this got in the theater, because I knew that if Daredevil from Netflix got this kind of reaction, God knows what the rest of the reactions were going to be like for this movie. So this was an awesome, I think them putting it this early in the movie, 10 minutes in, was such a great little tease, right, of what's to come, and a great way to just they keep giving. This movie is awesome because it gives you something to really dig into and really dig and love. About every 10-15 minutes you get an awesome moment, and I think that was really cool that this is the one they started with. Yeah, so Daredevil's in the MCU. I love it. Daredevil's in the MCU, and now with Hawkeye we got Vincent D'Onofrio, Kingpin in the MCU. Can't wait to see where that leads, and would also love to see Spider-Man and Daredevil team up on the big screen eventually, and I think that's something that we actually could see. So fingers crossed we get that in the future. The charges get dropped, which is kind of weird that they just rush past it, because one of my favorite things about this film is it does a great job just diving headfirst into main themes of Peter Parker Spider-Man, one of which being consequences. And I'll touch on that here in a second, of the main thing that I love that it does. But in this aspect, it's weird because he kind of doesn't face any consequences for the stuff with Mysterio. I think would have been a bigger deal if this movie was what the original plan for this movie was going to be, but they changed it because they had an opportunity to do something special, and I'm not mad at that. So I will gladly take what I got, and not care too much about that kind of stuff. But we then kind of get to see just kind of what life is like now for Peter. School is crazy. It's locked down. Oh my gosh, I didn't mention this when I recorded before. Shout out to them bringing back J.B. Smoove, Hannibal Buress, and Martin Starr as the teachers, and Martin Starr being the super fanboy, and Hannibal Buress being like, "Hey, yo, bro, we know what you did. Mysterio was right." Oh my god, I love it. That's awesome. I think those three characters are some of the best. One of my favorite lines in the entire MCU is when JB Smoove goes, being a man of science, I think it's witches. Oh my god, you gotta be kidding me. So yeah, we really get to see how this has changed Peter's life, and this is what I'm talking about when I say consequences. Spider-Man is always supposed to have consequences. Spider-Man's life is the way it is because of him. It is not because of other people. It is not because of hand he has been dealt. Sometimes it is because of the choices he makes and how those affect him and his loved ones and his villains. And I think this movie shows an excellent or does an excellent job of showing that to the fullest extent we have ever seen in a Spider-Man movie. And that we first time we really get to see it is here in the beginning with the MIT applications getting rejected. You know, Peter being Spider-Man not only made it so he couldn't get into his dream school, but made it so his girlfriend couldn't get into his dream school and his best friend couldn't get into their dream school. That sucks, and that's just an example of how Peter's life choices affect everybody around him, in a different way. It doesn't have to be physical. It doesn't have to be mental. It can be economically. It can be opportunity wise. It can be anything. And I think that is just the first of many examples throughout this movie of Peter's consequences and him having to deal with those consequences. So after that, he goes to Stephen, he goes to Doctor Strange. They start this spell. I think one of the really cool things about this, first of all, listen, Doctor Strange, you gotta go over the ground rules of these spells before you just start whipping them out. Like he didn't just think to tell Peter, like, hey man, by the way, everyone's gonna forget who you are. Because if he would have just said that, Peter could have said, well, can we have it, where like my family doesn't forget and my girlfriend doesn't forget and like the superhero community doesn't forget, and Doctor Strange would be like, cool, and then this movie wouldn't happen. But the movie has to happen, so lack of communication. The spell starts going crazy, and I love the way the world just completely breaks, and it's this purple, and like it's completely shattered. And I love the way this is shot and acted because Doctor Strange is struggling to keep everything together and keep it from just exploding. And like Peter is like floating, and you know, he's just all in this chaos, but it's like he doesn't realize it because he just keeps going. He's like, and I really need Ned to know because he's my best friend, and I really need MJ to know because she loves me, and blah blah blah. And I think that was really awesome. We also kind of get the first of a hint of the villains where we see the silhouette of Lizard. Some people have said that it's Doctor Strange, but I didn't see that. I just saw Lizard. But who knows? I need to see the movie again. Anyway, so Doctor Strange brings it back all in, and once again, consequences. Doctor Strange is pissed off at Peter. He talks about, I forget it. You're just a kid. Like you don't understand how this world works. That it was insanely irresponsible of you to do any of that. That was insane. You could have destroyed us all. This all could have just blown up in our face if I hadn't had the ability to stop it. Also, shout out to this Doctor Strange being a cocky asshole because that's who he is. But yeah, just another example of consequences happening in this movie and Peter being at the center of it. Peter, then has to go find this MIT lady because he didn't think to call anybody, which I thought was hilarious. So he finds her on the bridge. This is the last time we get to see the Iron Spider suit, probably ever. I know there's not a lot of people that are fans of it, but I actually like it. I think this is the best it ever looked. I also loved that his web wings in it. I think this is the first time we've ever seen like the web glider thing in the Iron Spider suit, and I love that it was like the like paraglider type squirrel suit wings. I thought that was really cool. Oh, and another side thing, because we get a really small moment of it in this where you can kind of see his HUD. But throughout all the Mysterio controversy and everything, Stark Industries got pulled into that, and I think, and this is their way of setting up Armor Wars down the road. But they, at the start of this movie, take away what a lot of people didn't like about this version of Peter, and that was the Stark aspect. He still has some of the tech, but he doesn't have Karen. He doesn't have Edith. He doesn't have the Stark internet where he can just facial recognize. He doesn't have the satellites. Like he has got to do this by himself, and I think this is an awesome way of showing that, where he's like checking every card to see where this MIT lady is. He finally gets there. They start talking, and here we go. We all knew it was coming because of the trailer. Doc Ock comes. If Daredevil was me knowing the theater was going to be good, this is when I knew the theater was going to be great. because we didn't even see Doc Ock yet. We didn't even see the road yet. We just heard the and the crowd was going crazy because they knew exactly what was going to happen. This is I think, a really cool fight. It was cool to see the way that this version of Toby would go up against that version of Otto, and also really like how he beat him. First of all, I think the choreography was really cool. It's just awesome to see the different ways that you can have Otto move. I love seeing him like crawl, or yeah, I guess crawl underneath the bridge with his arms. I think that was really awesome. But the Raimi trilogy was based in New York, yeah, and it was kind of modern. But the thing is it was this weird mixture of your modern America post 9/11 with a 1960s timeless New York. Very similar to like Batman the Animated Series, where it was, 40s cars and fashion, but you still have the technology of futuristic type. So I love that, you know, this Doc Ock, who has, space age arms, is no match for Tony Stark technology. Like, you gotta be kidding me? So I personally really like that Peter just hacked the suit when he absorbed some of the nanites. I thought that was actually really cool. So he beats Doc Ock. He's trying to figure out what's going on. Also shout out to when Doc Ock says, "I should have killed your girlfriend when I had the chance." Referencing Kristen Dunst's Mary Jane. Peter doesn't know that, and he comes out with the iron spider legs, and then we get that cool 8-limb on 8-limb action. I thought that was really, really cool. Here we go again. Crowd going absolutely insane. We hear the ha 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 ha. The pumpkin bomb comes out, and I've never been a fan of Green Goblin from the original trilogy. I thought he was cool, just never been like one of my favorites or anything. Um, I liked Doc Ock and Sandman better, but probably like Goblin better than James Franco, we don't need to talk about that guy. But this movie made me really like the suit, and I don't know if it's just seeing it and just being excited to see it again. I think the mask is my favorite part, so I was kind of bummed that they got rid of that, but they replaced it with a hood, which I love. I'm a sucker for hoods. If you know me, then you know anytime I create my own superhero or supervillain in a game, I'm always putting them in a hood. It's dope. Shout out to Moon Knight, coming soon to Disney Plus. But yeah, we get to see Green Goblin, and they do a great job where they show us, but they don't show us enough because as soon as we see Goblin, they take us away, and we go back to the Sanctum. And this is where Steven's like, "Hey man, you just broke reality. Instead of everyone forgetting who Spider-Man was, everyone who knew who Peter Parker is now coming here, and you need to fix it because this is your problem. Because this is the consequences for your actions." Crazy. So Peter has to fix it. He has to go and find all these different monsters that are coming in from different realities, and it starts. Doctor Strange has already captured Lizard. Now Peter has captured Otto. Also, really cool that happened off screen that Steven captured Lizard, because I would have loved to have seen that fight, because Doctor Strange is actually like beat up, like he has like a gash on his face or whatever. So I think that's interesting to think that Lizard actually got the jump on on Doctor Strange, because you would not think that would be a close fight, but who knows? Maybe it's a little closer than you would have thought. So Peter goes out to find Goblin, ends up finding Sandman and Electro. Shout out to the black suit. Also, I called it. I called that it was going to be Inside Out. So shout out to everyone who thought it was going to be Inside Out, because we were right. So yeah, and this is actually a really cool moment because, well, first let's talk about Jamie Foxx, Electro. Electro comes back, and it's so cool because he is in his neural system electric whatever blue that like he was in TASM 2, and they play the Electro theme from TASM 2, and it's beautiful and I love it, and that is something they do in this movie multiple times, where they bring back themes from the old movies, and it gets to the point later where it almost makes me tear up, but that's okay. So it's just awesome to get to see this version of Electro, and also love the reasoning behind him looking different is because the energy here is different. The energy in the MCU is different than the energy in the TASM universe. So I think that was a really cool, easy way to explain, why he's hot and yellow instead of beat and blue. This turns into an awesome moment where Sandman saves Peter. which is the consequences of Toby Peter's actions. You know, Toby and Sandman ended on a good note, so this version of Sandman is going to help out Peter, and I think that's really really cool and something that I think was really awesome that we got to see in the beginning of their interaction. The villains were done really well in this movie overall. At least 3 of them were. I think Electro, Goblin, and Ock, especially Goblin and Defoe, is a main reason for that. Were done really well. And then Sandman was done as good as he could have been done. You know, all he cared about was getting home to his daughter. You can't do much with that. The only problem was, why was he fighting against the people that were trying to get him home to his daughter? That was kind of weird. And then Lizard was just there, I think, to be another body and be a tie to the Garfield TASM universe, which is fine. But yeah, it's okay. Yeah. He captures those 2. They come back. I guess he goes back to the Sanctum, and then May calls him. Oh yeah, we get the scene where Norman is in the alley. We get the No More Goblin scene where he cracks the helmet. I think that was really cool because it just caught the audience back up on knowing, like, he in the original, I don't remember, but I don't think he was as split personality as he is in this movie. But I thought it was cool the way they kind of did that in this, where Norman, I mean, he didn't have control over turning it on and off, but you can tell in this movie when Willem Dafoe is Goblin versus when he is Norman, because he doesn't change his voice really. He doesn't really change his clothes or anything like that. He changes his mannerisms and he changes his facial expressions. He gets very Jim Carrey, like Grinch with it, where he curls his mouth. He kind of narrows his brow. Willem Dafoe really acted his ass off in this movie, and we see that later on in Happy's apartment. But yeah, it was outstanding, really well done. So yeah, we get the call from May. Shout out to May for being a real character in this movie again. But we get the call from May where she's like, hey, one of the guys is here. And all of us are like, oh, shit. Goblin went straight for May immediately. And then we get those expectations subverted when he's just there, like a homeless guy needing help. And as good as May Parker is, because she is a Parker, she is going to help him. And, you know, Peter's just like, hey, we just need to send him back. Like, he's not supposed to be here. And May's just like, look at him, like, he needs help. You know, she doesn't say this, but she's like, you know, you're Peter Parker, you are a Parker, you help people, that is your job. And we see that May embodies that, not only by speaking about this to him, but also the fact that she works at Feast, she works at this shelter. Like, this is what she does, she helps people, and that is what Peter Parker does. He helps people when he is wearing the mask and when he's not. And that's kind of what she's saying. It's like, no, you need to help him. We end up going back to the Sanctum. He ends up getting trapped, and we get the "I'm something of a scientist myself" line again, and great, you know, meme to the callback to the Rami, blah blah blah. And that's actually something this movie does really good. I think is everything leads perfectly through it. It is so streamlined. There's not really a B plot or a C plot. Everything is the same story. And even the moments that they take to make jokes and memes even build into the story, because Norman saying, you know, I'm something of a scientist myself, gets a weird payoff later when him and Tom are doing sciencey things. Like, you actually get to see it happen. And I think that's a really awesome way that this movie did such a good job of fan service, but fan service that helped the story. It wasn't just Rise of Skywalker where they were just throwing shit at the wall. Everything that they did, I guarantee you they looked at what they wanted to do with this movie and they said, we want to talk about I'm something of a scientist myself. We want to do Peter's pointing at each other. We want to do web shooter talk. And they said, how can we do this in this movie and it makes sense and it not take away from the feeling of this movie, take away from the story and feel off? Instead, how do we make it build the narrative and help make this the most Spider-Man movie there's ever been? And I think they did an amazing job of making it exactly that. It's a movie that is celebrating 20 years of not only Spider-Man movies, but superhero movies in general. And it does a beautiful job of doing that. And I think the way they handle fan service in this film is a perfect example. Doctor Strange comes in. He's gonna send them all back home. We find out that at least 3 of them are gonna go back straight to their death, and that does not sit well with Peter. Peter and Strange end up fighting over the box, of course. This is the beginning of this fight is so cool because we get Peter knocked out of his astral or knocked into his astral form, and we see the actual spider sense around him, which I caught in the theater, and I was geeking out about that because that was so cool. We actually got to see the little lightning bolts, Batman Arkham counter, super OG Spider-Man comic book stuff, and his unconscious body just dodging. And I love how powerful this made Spider-Man. Like it showed you how powerful he really is, and that if Peter just really fed into his spider sense, like you couldn't touch this man. I thought that was really awesome. And then this whole fight that breaks out in the mirror dimension was great. How I talk about consequences. First of all, just remember this: Peter chose to try to save these people. But just as this movie does consequences so good as a Spider-Man theme, it also does brilliance so good as a Spider-Man theme. My favorite part about this scene, it's a really cool action scene and something that would be a high spot in any other Marvel movie, but everything in this movie is so hype and so like outstanding that it kind of just feels like another moment. But is the fact that Doctor Strange is one of the most powerful characters that we've seen in the MCU, and Spider-Man beats him not with his powers, not with the help of other heroes, not with the interference of villains, not with magic. He beats him with his brain. He looks around and he goes, "Wait, isn't this trigonometry? Like I'm good at trigonometry." And he beats Doctor Strange because he's good at math. Because Peter Parker is a scientist, and this movie is the most scientist we have ever seen Peter Parker. Actually, multiple Peter Parkers ever. And I thought that was really awesome. And this was a great way of kind of setting up what we'll see later in some other scenes with him. So yeah, he ends up stopping Spider-Man or stopping Doctor Strange here. It's a cool turning point where he gets Doctor Strange out of the picture for a good amount of them for the next 40 minutes of the movie or however long, so we can focus on Peter and the villains. Peter ends up going back. They end up taking the villains to Happy's apartment, which, first of all, shout out to Happy's apartment for kind of just being like a treasure trove of Iron Man Easter eggs. There's badges on the wall. He has the dummy robot. He has like the boxing mask and gloves. Like it was really cool to see how his apartment was kind of just a smorgasbord of Easter eggs for the Iron Man movies, because these Spider-Man movies have kind of been a sequel to those, and that was cool. Just cool little secrets that you can find. Just love the fact that Happy is just like, "Hey, I checked my doorbell, and did you bring in a guy made of mud and a dude with robot limbs?" Like, I thought that was really funny. But yeah, here we go. Spider-Man's gonna try to cure these guys. He's using a fabricator, Stark fabricator. It looked like the same kind of machine that he made or that he used to make his red and black suit in Far From Home. And the first one up is Doc Ock. This is an awesome moment because once again we get to see Spider-Man being smart, and he's doing it with the help of Norman. Once again, just kind of feeding into the like, hey, Norman's not a bad dude when he's not Goblin. Norman Osborn is not bad. Goblin is bad. At least the way he's portrayed in this movie, anyway. And we can see Spider-Man being so smart, and so smart to the point where he is impressing Norman. Norman says, "Hey, if you ever want a job and don't mind jumping a couple universes, a couple universe commute, like, hey, I got something for you at Oscorp." So yeah, the first one up is Ock. Peter cures him. Doc Ock is cool. He's fixed. The limbs aren't talking to him, controlling him anymore, and he actually gives Peter some of the nanites back. That's when we get the gold spider on the integrated suit, I think is what it's called. I think it's a cool suit. I, I haven't been a big fan of the Spider-Man suits since in the MCU since his original Homecoming suit. I liked the upgraded black and red suits a good amount. This one I'm not huge on, but I don't hate it. I definitely like it. It looks really good in the video game, which you might be watching right now if I wasn't lazy. And who knows, it might grow on me. The Insomniac White Spider grew on me, so this one might too. Yeah, so he's out here looking all Spider-Man-y, and it's time to cure all the villains. This is when we get another. Oh, and then also Ned and MJ, who have kind of been tagging along. they're at Ned's house and they have the time bomb box or whatever, basically the self destruct button to send everybody back to their universes if something goes bad. But yeah, they're here. All the villains are here. They have really cool dialogue between some of the villains. Shout out to Lizard wanting to turn Electro into a lizard. That was one of my favorite lines in this movie. And then also they do a really good job of making it seem like Electro is the one that's gonna turn on everybody and cause shit to hit the fan, and it ends up kind of being a red herring because it eventually becomes a goblin that messes everything up, which is what you see when Peter has one of the strongest moments of spider sense in his life, where just everything stops and it's just him focused, like just in focus, and he just figures out, yep, Goblin's here. We got to stop him. A great, one of the best Goblin moments I think in this movie is when Ock is already fixed and he's talking to Norman. And shout out to this movie for just giving us moments like that. Like they build that there was history between the two of them, and we actually get to see it here. But you know, Ock just being like, "How does it feel, Norman? You're about to be whole." And without even turning around, you just hear Goblin. You don't hear Norman. You hear Goblin. He goes, "Yeah, whole." And you're like, "Oh shit, here we go." Shit hits the fan. Goblin and Spider-Man just absolutely start throwing hands. This fight is one of the best two fights I think in this movie, between this one and the final Goblin and Spider-Man fight. First thing that caught my eye was when Spider-Man does the Spider-Man PS4 thing, where he jumps up in the air, webs the ground, and just like pulls himself and just kicks Goblin through like 3 balconies. It was awesome. This is some of the most violent, aggressive action I think we've seen in a Marvel movie since probably like Civil War. I mean, I guess you could say Black Widow too, which had some cool stuff in it, but like just hands galore. These guys are just absolutely pummeling each other. Just more of Willem Dafoe giving it his all in this role when Spider-Man is punching him and Dafoe's just smiling, laughing louder and louder. I think that is way more intimidating, that's way more scary, and way more impressive for a villain than just not being affected by it. Is them enjoying it, is them, this guy is unhinged like no one can believe. Insane. They're just throwing hands. Goblin eventually like Batista bombs Spider-Man through 4 stories, which is ridiculous, and an awesome. The choreography in this fight is great. Kudos to whoever set this up, because I think this is one of the best superhero fights, and in a weird way, one of the most realistic just fights we've seen in a superhero movie to date. They end up in the lobby. Goblin looks like he's about to kill Spider-Man, and Aunt May, being a cool ass character in this movie like she is, grabs some rubble and is about to beat that ass, and she gets hit with the glider, and you're like, oh shit, there goes May. Um, and then you're like, oh, maybe not, and then the bomb goes off, and you're like, yep, that was it. And then she gets up, and you're like, maybe, and then she's all like wobbly and out of it, and you're like, yeah, no, May's done. And this is it. May's about to die. But before she does that, Goblin had left. Peter is like, this is insane. I can't do this. This isn't my responsibility. And she just looks at me. She's like, oh, it's not your responsibility. She's like, don't say that. You know, I don't remember the exact words, but it gets to the point where she goes, no, Peter, with great power, there must also come great responsibility. I think the way they did this was so beautiful. The fact that they made Aunt May Tom Holland's Uncle Ben is such an interesting and motivational choice that is different from anything I have seen in other, forms of Spider-Man media, and I've watched a lot. I just really loved that decision. I think that gave this a lot more weight. And this scene, Aunt May's death and her telling him this, not only is motivation for Peter for the rest of this movie, but it recontextualizes the entire trilogy to be a Spider-Man origin. And we will get to that in the end of this movie, but this is kind of what kicks that off. Beautiful scene, followed up by one of the most depressing scenes in a superhero movie, where Tom Holland just lost his mom for all intents and purpose, and he is just in front of this giant video of J. Jonah Jameson, film technique, this godlike figure yelling at him, telling him it is your fault. These are the consequences of your actions. This is what happens when you meddle with things. This is what happens when Spider-Man gets involved. People get hurt, people die, and it is all his fault. Peter Parker, this is what J. Jonah Jameson might as well said. Peter Parker, you are the reason your Aunt May is dead. Because that's exactly what Pete's thinking, and that's exactly what Pete is feeling. Everything he has done has led to the death of his aunt, the destruction of his best friend and girlfriend's career, the death of Tony, Doctor Strange hating him, these villains just being let loose, the multiverse destroyed, like everything that is bad that has happened to Peter is because of Peter. It is his fault. And that is exactly how he feels in this moment. This scene is insane, and Tom Holland's acting in it was absolutely impeccable, and I think some of the best acting we've seen in the MCU as a whole. Then here it comes. How does this movie come back from this feeling of just emptiness in the theater? How do they do it? They bring in the other Spider-Man. Ned, for whatever the hell reason, is magic. And he goes, I just want to see Peter. And the portal starts to open, and immediately you saw the eyes. That's what I saw. The crowd started going crazy. I saw the eyes. Andrew Garfield comes running through. It's Andrew Garfield, baby. The TASM theme hits. My man is charismatic as hell. Shout out to Andrew Garfield, the best Spider-Man. No debate. Fight me. I don't even care. Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man there's ever been. Y'all can keep all the other stuff. TASM 1 and TASM 2, super underrated movies. They're not great, but they're worth it. And this, we knew it was going to happen. Like, we knew that we were going to see Andrew and Toby, but it didn't take away from how freaking exciting it was to see him take off that mask and to see him just immediately click back into being Peter Parker from the TASM movies. Like, I think the two people that stole the show were Andrew Garfield and Willem Dafoe, because it was just so great to see them come back to those characters, and you can tell they had such a passion for those characters that coming back to them felt like probably coming home. But there's no way home. Andrew's back. Then we get the other one. Toby's back. Toby and Andrew immediately have cool chemistry. They're trying to shoot each other, and then they're like, hey, man, you're pretty cool. The world's screwed. Ned and MJ are like, all right, well, we need to find Peter. We need to know what's going on. They're like, well, where would he be? And he's at the top of the school where him and MJ were hanging out earlier. This movie does another great thing where it really just takes its time. And we get a great moment of Ned and MJ just hugging Peter, and just telling him they're sorry, that they're there for him, and everything. I think that was a really beautiful moment. And then MJ goes, hey, there's some people here, by the way, we're not alone, or whatever. And Tom just immediately is ready to fight. And I think this is probably the best shot, well, second best shot of the movie, behind the J. Jonah Jumbotron stuff, is the shot of the top of the school, like bell tower or whatever, with the moon in the background, and you just see Garfield and Toby just like perched up. Oh man, it's so dope. And they come down, and they have this speech about or Garfield comes down or whatever, and he starts to do the whole, I know what you're going through, and Tom's like, no man, like don't try to even tell me that, like that is not what I want to hear. But the thing is that it's what he has to hear, because in everyday life, everyone loses people. We all lose people. And you can go up to your friend who just lost someone and say, hey, man, I know what you're going through. And yeah, it doesn't sound real. And the truth is that even if you feel like you do, you don't, because you aren't them. This is the difference in this moment, is that Andrew and Toby do know what Tom is going through, because they are him. They are all Peter Parker. Like, they all know exactly what he's going through. They both do. They've lost their Uncle Ben's. Tom just lost his and Aunt May. And I think them having her say the line of responsibility and Tom reciting it, and the other two saying, yeah, that's exactly what Uncle Ben said the night he died, is just a great moment of showing, like, of Tom finally being like, okay, I guess they do get it. Like, they are my people. They are me, and I guess I can trust them. And really beautiful scene that I could probably go on for a lot longer, but won't for the sake of time. They didn't transition to, okay, we got to go stop this. And they're in the lab, Peter Parker being smart, Peter Parker being sciencey. The scene, the next two scenes, the scene of them in the high school and then the scene of them prepping for the fight, are just exactly what everybody wanted. It was just these three different Spider-Mans hanging out, talking to each other. Shout out to the web shooter jokes, hilarious. Shout out to the joke about, I was actually really sad where Tom's talking about Harry dying, or Toby's talking about Harry dying, and Ned's just like, oh, oh, that's messed up. We find out that uh, Ned, or that Toby and MJ are together. Earlier, we got Andrew Garfield talking about Gwen, which makes me tear up because Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone as Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy, I think, is the best superhero relationship we've ever seen on screen. Absolutely beautiful and charismatic, and single-handedly saves those movies from any of the flack that other people give it, in my opinion. So we kind of get to catch up with these guys, these characters. Toby we haven't seen in damn near 20 years. Garfield we haven't seen in almost 7 or so, 6. So it was great to just kind of get that moment to breathe with them, see them just immediately revert back to themselves. Especially Andrew. Even if you just watch him in the background, he's doing so much stuff. We get the Spider-Man pointing meme. It's great. They then are figuring out, we got to cure everybody. Andrew's like, I've cured Lizard before, I can cure him again. I love the line we get where Toby's like, yeah, I've thought about that for a long time. I think the way that Toby plays his Peter in this is so interesting because it's not just an experienced Peter, it's a Peter who has lived with all the decisions he's made. And you can tell that he's thought about how he would want to do things different. Anytime in any of those movies, he could have saved the villains, and he never really did. And I think that was a great way that they portrayed it in this, especially in the end with him catching the glider, because in the first movie, Toby could have caught the glider, but he didn't. He just jumped over it, and then it killed Norman. And I love that at the end of this movie, he doesn't only save Tom, but he also saves Norman. That's really cool, and yeah, awesome. So yeah, then we go to the top of Captain America Central, the Statue of Liberty. The shield's kind of weird, but yeah, it's the MCU New York. Once again, great stuff. We get the my back joke, another joke on a joke on a joke. We have the amazing moment where they're talking about the villains. Toby's like, yeah, I fought a black gooey alien from space, and Tom's like, oh, I fought an alien from space. Oh, in space too. And Andrew's like, dang, you guys are all cool. The only guy I ever really fought was a Russian guy in a rhino suit. Love it. Oh, you're amazing, dude. Come on, say it. Awesome stuff. Really, really fun to see. And then here it goes. Everything goes down. We start seeing the fight. And we see, I guess it's Lizard, Electro, and Sandman fight the three Peters. And the Peters are getting their ass whooped, which I love. And they kind of, have the moment where they reconverge with each other. Toby and Andrew are like, hey, we've only worked alone. We've never worked with a team. Like, we don't know what we're doing. And I think that was so awesome to get to see the strong suit of Tom Holland Peter is that he has worked with a team. He has experience with the Avengers. So he becomes this natural leader in this. And then we get the moment. We get the dope moment where they all mask up, run. The score kicks in. The Spider-Man MCU theme hits for like the first time ever. And they're web sling around. And Tom Holland's thwips them over and slingshots them over, and they start fighting, and they land on the. It's great. So yeah, single-handedly, one by one, they start healing all of the villains. Green Goblin then comes in. Doctor Strange comes back at some point. It's the whole thing. Reality starts to break. That sucks. Yeah, they all start fighting, and there's not really. In a weird way, this as cool as this moment is, it's also kind of the most forgettable because it was just combat, and I think the strong suit of this movie wasn't the action but was the character moments. So this doesn't have a lot of those in it. I have some cool ones. I would be remiss if I did not talk about my favorite part of this movie, which is when MJ falls and Andrew catches her, because that is again, something that I think a lot of people wanted from this film and a lot of people thought was going to happen from this film, including me. And even though it did, it was one of the most emotional moments of the entire movie. And it's not just because he did it. Him doing it is cool. It's the fact that he did it. He looks at MJ and he goes, are you okay? And he's just crying. And she looks at him. She goes, yeah. She goes, are you okay? And he just, yeah, I'm good. Andrew Garfield just I can't say enough good things about it. This is one of my favorite scenes. I could do a whole podcast on just that. I think that is beautiful. Chef's kiss. Everyone involved in that moment deserves all the flowers in the world. They cure all of them. Yeah, we get to see Thomas Hayden Church, I guess, and Reese Ifans. Yeah, okay, yeah, whatever. Oh, we do get a really cool moment where I love that they made Electro seem so powerful, and that the Spider-Man couldn't beat Electro, and that they needed Doc Ock's help. I thought that was really cool, and I like seeing that Doc Ock got to be a good guy in this movie. Really, really dope. I feel like there's a moment before Toby starts fighting Goblin because we get two closing moments with the other Peters and their villains. We get Toby and Ock, which is a great, which is really, really beautiful moment, honestly. Where Ock is just like, "Oh my God, Peter, my boy, like, how are you? You look so good, and how have you been?" And he just goes, I'm trying to be better. Just a great moment. We get Garfield and Electro, where Max is like, "Man, dude, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of thought you'd be black." First of all, hilarious joke. Hint for Spider-Man. I also, or hint for Miles. Also love that Andrew Garfield's reaction to that is, "Oh man, I'm sorry, dude." But also kind of weird because I thought the spell brought everyone that knew Peter or that knew Spider-Man was Peter Parker, and Electro never knew that, and he even admits it right here that he didn't know that. But like I said, I got the movie I wanted, so it's okay. So I don't really remember where that happened in continuity with the rest of the movie, but we then get the final fight between Goblin and Tom Holland, where they're fighting on the Captain America shield at the base of the Statue of Liberty, and they are just absolutely beating the shit out of each other. And then it very quickly turns into Tom Holland just like beating Goblin to a pulp. It looked like, for the wrestling fans out there, Brock Lesnar versus John Cena at SummerSlam back in the day, where this was a one-sided affair, and just absolutely crazy. Tom gets to the point where he picks up the glider and he's going to kill Goblin, and Goblin's kind of asking for it. And right before he does, Toby steps in and he stops it. And I said it before, but I thought this was such an awesome moment because Toby isn't only saving Goblin, but he's saving Peter. And I think you see it first as him saving Peter, but then when you think about it, it's also his way of redemption for himself for letting Goblin die and letting his best friend's dad die. Something that he could have done the first time, and he actually does it here. I think a really beautiful moment, really great, and Tom really getting it in that moment, with great power, and we need to help. And I think Andrew throws the cure, Tom catches it, stabs him, and Norman's back. Oh God, what did I do? Blah blah blah. Meanwhile, I don't remember if I mentioned it, but reality is breaking because Goblin blew up the box, or blew up the spell. So Doctor Strange is up at the top of the Statue of Liberty trying to make sure the world doesn't implode. So Peter goes up there and he's like, "What are we supposed to do?" And he's like, "I can't fight them back. Everybody's coming through." And awesome, more fan service. You could see the little silhouettes of Rhino, Craven, all sorts of people, Scorpion, awesome. And Tom says, well, what if they just all forgot? What if everyone forgot who I was? And he goes, that would work, but you need to understand that means, everyone who knows you, everyone who loves you, like, we won't know who you are. We won't know who you are. And he's like, yeah, I understand. Just give me a second. And he says his goodbyes to the other Peters. Shout out to them. Round of applause. Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, thank you for coming back. Thank you for giving it. Andrew, thank you for giving it your all. Toby, I think you left a little to desire, but you played your Spider-Man, I think, in a really compelling way, and a Spider-Man that wasn't just a vet, but a Spider-Man who lived with all of the decisions he ever made, and you could tell regretted a lot of them. So shout out to you guys. Thank you for doing this. Marvel, thank you for getting them in here. Sony, thank you for getting them in here. Peter then goes over to MJ and Ned, who I haven't talked a lot about in this, but they were really good versions of those characters and the best they've been in any of the three movies, definitely in this one. And he kind of gives them the rundown, like, hey, you're not going to remember who I am. And a really heartbreaking moment because Zendaya and Tom have really good chemistry, for sure. It's not Andrew and Emma, but it's really, really good. And, Zendaya says, well, I love you. And Tom starts to say it back. And she goes, no, just tell me when you find me again. She was like, I figured it out one time. I can figure it out again. I really liked that. I thought that was a good moment. So yeah, and just like that, Spider-Man zips off. Doctor Strange fixes it, and we're kind of like, whoa, what just happened? I guess no one knows who Spider-Man is. We then cut to Spider-Man or Peter going to the coffee shop where MJ works because he's there. He's prepared this speech, it looks like, to tell her, like, hey, this is the deal. I'm Spider-Man. We're best friends. He's girlfriends, blah, 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 blah. And he walks in there, and through their conversation, he decides not to tell her. What really triggers it is that he sees that she has a Band-Aid from the battle. He asks her, he's like, how does it feel? And she goes, well, it doesn't hurt anymore. And it was just the moment where Peter needed to be like, okay, now's not the time. And I don't interpret it as he'll never talk to them again. To me, I interpret it as two things. One, it isn't the time now to do this. And two, when I do it, I'm going to do it the right way. I'm not just going to tell her everything. I'm going to earn her love and earn her trust again. And I'm going to do it correctly. I'm not going to do it through lies. I'm going to do it through being myself. And she's going to love that. And I think the way the two of them played the scene was really interesting because you can tell that MJ is like into him. Like you never really see her vulnerable like that except around Peter and Ned. And you see it in this moment. And I thought that was really beautiful. And I look forward to seeing how this will pay off. I don't think it would be in the next movie. Probably the movie after that if we get another trilogy. But definitely look forward to seeing them together again. And then we have it. We have, I'm going to say it, the greatest Spider-Man moment of all time, at least in film, maybe ever, where Tom Holland Spider-Man comes into a broke-ass apartment. No one knows who this man is. He has lost his family. He has lost his community. He has lost everything. He has to get a GED. One of the smartest minds in the Marvel Universe has to get a GED because he sacrificed his entire life to save everyone. He is being dealt a hand and a fate worse than death. Because I think if you ask anyone, would you rather die or have everyone you know forget who you are? A lot of people would say they'd want to die. I think I would. He has lost everything. He has to start from ground zero. He lost his aunt. He lost his friends. He lost the superhero community. He lost his education. He lost everything. He lost the Stark suit. He lost the technology. It's gone. He is starting from ground zero, and he is the most Spider-Man we have ever seen a Spider-Man be in film. He makes his own suit. The suit looks beautiful. I cannot wait to see like HD res shots of this thing. I think it's going to be amazing. No pun intended. Yeah, no pun intended. It's going to be spectacular. It's going to be sensational. Dang. Oh man. It's going to be superior. Okay. I'm done. But it just was beautiful, and it was so red and so blue, and then they shot it at night in the snow in New York during Christmas, and I cannot wait to see where this version of the character goes. They have so many opportunities, and I think I might do a pitch video down the road of what I would love to see from a Spider-Man 4. It involves, maybe a villain we got a hint of. It involves maybe a certain feline. It'd be pretty cool. We'll see. But yeah, overall, this movie was the most Spider-Man a movie has ever been. And it wasn't just because there were three of them. It was because the theme of this movie was consequences and dealing with those consequences and sacrifice. And with great power, there must also come great responsibility. And that is exactly what Tom Holland understands. This movie recontextualizes the MCU first three Spider-Man films as a Spider-Man origin story. He has always been a hero. This is what makes him into a superhero. This is what makes him into Spider-Man on his own. No one knows him. All he has is himself, his brain, his wit, and that's all. He doesn't have Stark. He doesn't have the Avengers. He doesn't have a support system. It is simply Peter Parker by himself going out into the world to make a difference. And I think that was beautiful. And I think that's exactly what this film needed to be. And it was an ending I could not have guessed in the slightest. And I absolutely love it and cannot wait to see where it goes. And just am absolutely still in shock at how well put together this movie was at the end of the day. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on Spider Man No Way Home. I would love to hear what you guys think. Drop a comment, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, talk superheroes with me. I would love to. I really want to try and do more of these. I know it's been a while. Have some things some ideas I'd love to do. Like I said, a Spider-Man 4 pitch, maybe a 2021 Disney Plus in review. Eventually, we'll do that MCU ranking. Different things. I'd love to know what you guys would like to see me do, see me talk about. And until next time, stay spectacular and have a lovely day.